Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to another edition of Chaz Calenda, Attorney at Law. This is episode 4, where we try to provide all our viewers with interesting areas of law that you may come across on your day-to-day basis, and where we talk about our ability to exercise our fundamental and constitutional rights. I'm Chaz Calenda. I'm an attorney at Inman and Torgy in Coventry, Rhode Island, where I focus mostly in criminal defense and protecting individual liberties and constitutional rights. Tonight we have a very special guest. We've been talking in the last couple of episodes about our Second Amendment rights and how they've come under attack in recent years, not only here in Rhode Island, but across the United States. And tonight I am proud to introduce someone I would refer to as the queen of all things firearms here in Rhode Island, my guest, Daria Bruno. Daria, welcome to Chaz Calenda, Attorney at Law, episode 4. So glad to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I so appreciate this. This is awesome. Thank you, Chaz.
Oh, I'm glad that you were able to make it, and I'm glad you're going to be able to discuss some of these areas of Second Amendment law that we're going to discuss that are rapidly changing, at least in the past couple of weeks. I want to get to the case that's going to be heard by the United States Supreme Court soon. They announced it this week. They're going to hear the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Corlett, where they're going to examine whether or not there is a Second Amendment right to carry a firearm outside of your home. As we know that there's already a fundamental constitutional right to have one in your home for the purposes of self-defense, but the court's going to take up that issue in its next term. But I wanted to start a little bit about having you tell everyone a little bit about your background and what you do. Although most of us here in the Second Amendment community know you, some of our viewers may not. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and what you stand for?
Well, what I do is I am a firearms instructor, and this is what I do every single day, all the time, 24/7, basically. Lately, I've been doing a lot of that because of COVID, number one, back in March of 2020 when COVID started. It was a revelation to a lot of people that there were things that were happening that they were very concerned about, like not having basic toilet paper, paper towels, things that we take for granted every single day. So it was very concerning to many, many people that thought, okay, so what's next? And then we saw food, right? People were going in to buy meat and
Sure.
protein, and that was all missing. And so it was very reminiscent of history, things that we have seen in the past under different regimes that really frightened a lot of people. And one of the first things that a regime like that would do is restrict your Second Amendment right or restrict your health care. And we see this all the time. If you just pick up a history book, you can see what's going on. So that prompted a lot of people to go out and buy firearms because they were very afraid. And so
Right.
that in turn made people become very conscientious about firearm safety. They didn't know anything about a firearm. It's like, well, I never thought I would be in this situation, so now I have to get some training. So that's where I came in. A little bit about my background. I am not law enforcement. A lot of people ask me if I'm law enforcement. They ask me if I'm military. I am not. I'm just an enthusiast. As a matter of fact, I came from a very anti-gun household. My mom, completely liberal, completely anti-gun. No guns in this house. We will not have them. They will not be tolerated.
Wow.
All guns do is kill babies. That's it. So when I moved to Louisiana in 2000, I was exposed to the firearms community because everybody in Louisiana, well, I say that everybody, well, majority of them have firearms. And it doesn't matter. It crosses racial divide. It's not a partisan issue. You can be liberal, you can be far left, you can be far right, you can be somewhere in the middle, you can be black, white, Hispanic, gay, trans. It doesn't matter. you have a firearm, because that's just a culture. That's the way that that society is down there. So I'm like, oh, there's going to be something to this. And so I explored it and I wanted to find out what firearms were all about. So I took a lesson, and that's where I began. And I fell in love with it day one, and it started all of this. Thank God.
I mean, and let me tell you, it started an amazing thing from my perspective because thinking back, it had to be at least 11, 12 years ago when you probably took me out to the Smithfield Rod and Gun Club to help me qualify for my first permit, and really got me into it at that point. But you hit on a lot of good points, Daria, just in your own introduction. That this is a way of life for people who have become people who have wanted to be firearm owners, law-abiding firearm owners. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about just how important it is for those of us in the Second Amendment community to have these safe, people being able to use firearms in a safe and responsible manner, being able to be trained in a safe and responsible manner, and just how serious you take that as an instructor and somebody who's well known in the community. How serious do you take that, and how do you impress upon your students just the importance of that?
I take it extremely seriously. It is very, very important to me. And anybody that shows me any lack of that, then they're not my client. You will not get a lesson with Lock, Stock, and Daria. That's all there is to it. You will not. That's the name of my company is Lock, Stock, and Daria. I have two extremely wonderful instructors that work for me. One is Beth Bennett. Another one is Steve Hogan. I have been affiliated with them for years. They are wonderful instructors, and they follow the same mantra that I do. If you're not serious about committing to firearm safety, number one, and getting some training, then we don't want you as our client. We really don't. We want to see some seriousness. I understand that firearms ownership is a Second Amendment right, and I am all for that. The founding fathers got it right. The founding fathers said shall not be infringed. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. We don't need any laws beyond that. That's it. That's where it ends right there. We can't make another law. And this is what everything this is what we're seeing right now and we've seen it for years since the 30s, trying to
Right.
enact law after law after law to restrict our rights. But I hold people personally responsible for their actions. So if you want to own a firearm, I think you should take it upon yourself to get trained and do it the right way. And that's probably going to
And
segue into what you're talking about with concealed carry at some
oh,
point in
absolutely.
this
Especially
conversation.
when you look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you look at it in a state like Rhode Island. It's a state that is, let's just say, slightly hostile to Second Amendment rights. And I think I'm using a pretty generous term there in hostile. But if you look at it, we have no choice but to police ourselves to make sure we are safe and law abiding gun owners, because the minute something goes wrong in this state, the minute some law abiding gun owner does something stupid or messes up or is not acting in a way that's responsible, our rights are going down the toilet, because they do it every year in the General Assembly. They introduce these bills which attempt to further water down the plain language of not only the United States Constitution, which should be enough right there, but you have the state counterpart of the Rhode Island Constitution, which, in my opinion, is even more direct than the United States Constitution Second Amendment. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I don't know how much
Period.
more direct it gets. Yeah, period. End of story, end of discussion. I don't understand where I'm just a lawyer, so forgive me if I sound ignorant on this, but my understanding was the Constitution trumps any other laws that are in conflict with the wording of that Constitution. And I understand the Rhode Island Supreme Court a long time ago interpreted our version of the Second Amendment to not be as all encompassing as it sounds. So there's that issue right there. But uh, the the United States Supreme Court is kind of been wishy-washy, I would say, a little wishy-washy on weighing in just as how far the Second Amendment goes, and I think we're going to find out just how far that goes. Hopefully, when they hear this Corlett case, but. The issue of concealed carry, you brought up a good point, Daria. The issue of concealed carry has been a contentious one here, and it's one that we as gun owners in Rhode Island take seriously because it has been such a difficult path to tread over the last several decades, trying to become a law-abiding concealed carry permit holder. And maybe you can tell us a little about your experiences as the situation in Rhode Island has evolved to try to be a law-abiding gun owner without any political connections, trying to get a concealed carry permit in the state of Rhode Island.
It's not an easy task, and just to be very, very clear, okay, so for people that are listening right now, I am a Second Amendment supporter. I believe in the right to bear arms. I believe that, the way our founding fathers framed the Second Amendment is absolute. I don't think that there is any doubt about it. I don't think we need law after law after law. I think that privately a citizen should take it upon themselves to get trained. That's what I believe in. And if you want to do it the right way, you should do it the right way, because our loved ones are out there on the street. And if you want to go ahead and carry a firearm, I think, okay, if that's our right, we should be able to do that. But I also think that you should take it upon yourself to get trained and do it responsibly. That's my thought. It's like driving a car. Even though I know driving a car is a privilege and it's not a right, but I think that you should still be able to get some training and have the resources available, which is available so readily. I'm not the only firearms instructor out there. There's so many wonderful, great firearms instructors out there that can help you attain your goals. So get trained, okay? And that being said, in Rhode Island, it is not an easy task to get a concealed carry permit. They do put you through some hoops and wickets. By and large, there are some jurisdictions within our within the state that are easier than others. Some really want to torture you, and there are some that, if you're a law-abiding citizen, if you are not a prohibited person, you're not a habitual drunkard, you're not a felon, you're not a domestic terrorist, you're not a drug abuser, you're not a habitual drunkard, all those things that we see on every single application that we apply for. Yes, okay, so we have to do that. That's number one. So they're going to delve deeply into your background. And it depends on what community that you're going through. So what jurisdiction that you're going through, they could be arbitrary or not. It really depends on what town you're going through. So the shooting requirement, that is a whole nother thing. The shooting requirement is at 25 yards with a handgun, and that is not an easy task to do. And this is what I try to tell my people that want to come and train with me. They're like, well, I've never been in trouble with the law. I'm not a prohibited person. Like, okay, so you have to shoot. Okay, well, I shoot. Would you shoot at 25 yards? Well, no, I shoot at 7 yards. Okay, well, you have to get that target out to 25 yards. It's a long shot with a handgun. So a lot of training is involved in this. You went through it. You went through it with me.
I've been through it at least, I think it's either 3 or 4 times now, and it is no easy task. You can barely see the target for many people down at 25 yards. And I have a question, just as an aside almost. You're in if you're carrying a firearm for self-defense and you shoot somebody at 25 yards, does that sound like self-defense to you if you're shooting somebody at 25 yards?
Okay, I get this all the time, and I get into arguments with people about this, and I'll explain that. I understand that, yes, at 25 yards, if you're shooting somebody, you're probably going to go to jail because you have a reasonable opportunity to escape at that point. That's not the intent of the qualification course. The qualification course is to be sure that you're proficient with a firearm. And I'm just following what the law says that we are supposed to do. And I get into arguments and they're saying, well, that's promoting a false sense of the law. It's like, well, if I shoot at 25 yards, then basically that's telling me that it's okay to shoot somebody at 25 yards. No, that's not, because
Yeah.
you're signing an affidavit on your concealed carry permit that says that you have read the Rhode Island statutes, 1147. You've read that entire chapter. And if you've read it, you know it's not lawful to shoot somebody at 75 feet. So,
That-
you know, and I actually do not have, and I might get some pushback on this, and that's fine. I'll take it. Bring it on, because this is what I do.
you can handle
This
it,
is what I
Daria.
do. Bring it, but I can handle it. Bring it on. It's unreasonable. It's not right. They're sending a false message and this and that. It's like, no, it just makes you come into the range so that they know that you know how to discharge a firearm properly. I've had people, Chaz, that have come in and literally they've asked me, how do I turn it on? Like, seriously? Yeah, how do I turn
And these are
a
people
gun
who are trying to
on?
qualify for a concealed carry permit.
Yeah, exactly. And so I take this very seriously. I have kids out there in that world. I have two girls, and everybody is attached to a loved one. So if you want to stick a gun in your pocket and walk around with it, and you've never even discharged it, never done it safely, there's a potential that you might pull it out. And granted, you might be 100% right in doing what you're doing to defend your life, but you don't know what the hell you're doing with your firearm. You pull it out, you miss, and you hit my kid, your loved one. I take that personally. I do. I
As you
do.
should. And I think that you're a perfect example of debunking the stereotype that the gun control advocates like to point to. You're a perfect example of someone who is not out there, being the cowboy or cowgirl, whatever you want to identify as today. But it's like you're not out there looking to shoot somebody. You're not out there looking to just wield your gun just because you can. You are doing everything you possibly can to make sure not only yourself but the people who you train take this as serious, take this responsibility and privilege as seriously as, or I should say, right, as seriously as they should be taking it, because there are lives at stake. And using a firearm in an unsafe manner, I don't think there's any person who supports the Second Amendment who supports using a firearm in an unsafe, untrained manner. And I think I'm so glad you brought that up, because I'm on the same page with you, Daria. I set that question up for you because I had a feeling I knew how you were going to answer it. I agreed that Rhode Island qualification test, it's not about encouraging people to shoot somebody at 25 yards. It's really about
No, it's
making sure
not.
you have the skills, really making sure so you have the skills to handle the firearm in a situation where you may have to unfortunately use it. And I'm glad that you made that abundantly clear.
Well, that's what it's all about. It's just being able to handle your firearm. Take Massachusetts, for instance, okay? As draconian and as backward as Massachusetts is with their firearms law. So they have an assault rifle ban in dreaded air quotes, right? As Dan Bongino
What's an
would say.
assault rifle, by the way? Yeah, I'm not sure
Right,
what that
right.
is, but
Right. The dreaded air quotes is the assault weapons ban. They have a high capacity magazine ban. What does that mean? It's a standard magazine capacity. Um, but you can take a 4-hour class in Massachusetts and never discharge your firearm ever, okay, in a safe manner, and go buy one and leave with it the same day, put it in your pocket, and you're good to go. I mean,
no firing
as strict
requirement,
as,
right?
right. I would say let them have the AR-15s, let them have unlimited magazine capacity, but if you're going to issue a concealed carry permit, I would institute some type of, get to know your gun. Train. You gotta have some type of live fire, not just a classroom class. I'm a big proponent of that. I think that there should be some training involved. Absolutely. And that being said, yes, I am a Second Amendment person, but you have to personally take this upon yourself to personally, be responsible for your own actions. And you're not going to do that if you just want to put a gun in your pocket and you
Absolutely.
don't know. It's like it's like buying a tool. So you're going to go buy a circular saw, and your plan is to build some beautiful cherry shelving in your house. So what are you going to do? You're going to go buy that circular saw, and you're just going to cut up some really good cherry wood and make it a big abortion. No, you're probably going to read the directions. You're going to watch 18 YouTube videos on it, and you're going to buy some or find some wood in a dumpster and practice on it, right? Before you decide to tackle your project. I look at it the same way. It's a tool. It's a tool.
It, it is.
Learn it.
And
Learn
I think,
it. Get to
yeah,
know it.
absolutely. And I think that it's important because, as you mentioned, some of the jurisdictions in Rhode Island are making it difficult enough for you to get a concealed carry permit. Even though there are two ways to get one, you go through your local licensing authority, which is usually a chief of police in one city or town, or you could take your chances and go through the attorney general and try to get one that way. Now, there's major differences on how to do that. And we've covered that in previous episodes. Towns, if you meet a specific set of objective criteria, it's supposed to be a shall issue on that permit. The Attorney General, under state law, has pretty much unlimited discretion to decide whether or not you're going to get a permit from him based upon a showing of need. Do you need to exercise your constitutional right to carry a firearm? There it's an odd situation that there's a kind of a hybrid system in place in Rhode Island. But my experience being in my practice that some of the towns are shooing you off to the attorney general because they don't want to put their name on your permit for whatever reason. And even though there are court cases that have said they can't be doing that, they have to accept and fairly consider your application and apply the statute that applies to those towns. It's not being done uniformly. And I've seen it. I know you've seen it. And it's a frustrating process for many of those people looking to get their firearm permits. Although I think in recent years, I have seen some improvement. How would you agree with that?
I would definitely agree with that. I absolutely 100% agree with that. And here is what's going on, okay? Because I'm in the trenches every single day. So I'm busy. I'm very busy. And since March 2020, it has been like absolute bedlam. That's why I had to hire two people. Um, I can't even keep up with the amount of work that I have with people wanting to get firearms. And I would say not only firearms training, um, advice, concealed carry permits. I would say that 50% of my clientele right now, take a guess, there are minorities, they're black women, they're Hispanics, they're Hispanic men, they're Hispanic women, and they are the most vulnerable. They're living in the communities that are their town. Oh gosh, I'm having a brain fart right now. But the town
Yeah.
councils in the town. Thank you. In the town councils, that in their communities, they're liberal and they want to defund the police, like, because that's a cool thing to do right now. It's like, oh, we got to get on this narrative. None of these people, none, not one, zero, Chaz, of the people that I deal with, the Hispanic women, the black women, the black men, the Asians, they do not want to see this happening. And so they're like, okay, you're defunding the police. Now what? Now what? We are the most vulnerable. We're in these communities and we need to get concealed carry permits because we fear for our lives. And we're just walking on the streets as a a single Hispanic woman, a single Black woman, they're afraid to leave their houses with riots and sex trafficking and the crime that's happening right now. And now you're telling them
Sure.
they have no backup. They have no backup from the police. That's unconscionable. That's unbelievable.
I
So
agree.
where do you leave them? So when they talk about even in federally, okay, so we have the House that are pending right now and they're ready to go to the Senate. There's no appetite there for that because they know their constituents don't want it. They don't want it. Their constituents are largely mixed. They are Hispanic, they're Black, they're men, they're women. And they are hearing from them saying, if you're going to defund the police, don't take our gun rights away. So,
It makes sense. It makes sense.
It absolutely. And I am seeing an overwhelming majority of minorities coming to me looking for some solutions, looking for some answers, and their answer is getting a firearm.
So you have really, when you have the General Assembly here in Rhode Island or in pretty much any other state that would attempt to pass these bills that we've been seeing here in Rhode Island, when you have them doing this, there really is a negative effect on these minority communities if they are going to restrict law-abiding citizens' ability to get a firearm or make it so that it's almost impossible to get these permits. Simply, just to use an example, is the the standard the Attorney General uses, where you have to show a demonstrable need, and according to this Attorney General and prior ones before him, the need of self-defense generally is not good enough without having some sort of incident in your background which shows that you have been the subject of some sort of violent crime, or you have a stalker maybe against you, something along those lines. You're really disarming a segment of the community that cannot afford to be disarmed. And I think
Exactly.
these overly restricted gun laws are really having the unintended, maybe I would think it's unintended consequences of disarming some of the most vulnerable members of our community.
And that's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing. And that's why these people are being very proactive. They're coming, they want to do it the right way, they want to get trained. Some of these people are like absolutely terrified. They're like, I don't like guns. I never wanted a gun. I've seen what gun violence does in our community, but I have no choice. I have no choice. So what is the solution? What is the solution? What do we do? Do we address the problem? Do we defund the police? Do we just keep turning a blind eye to it? So in the meantime, these people are going to take the bull by the horn and they're going to make these decisions to get a concealed carry permit. And I will tell you this, is that a lot of these local jurisdictions, forget the Attorney General's office, because that guy, you have to beat him 100%.
Don't worry, I'm going to beat him.
And we have to get you elected because you understand all of this. But largely, the local jurisdiction that you can apply to, which is shall issue, they get it. They get it. I do this all day long. This is all I do. I get calls from the departments that ask me, hey, did you qualify Chaz Calenda on 12/1/2020? And he qualified with a 45 ACP and his score was 271. I don't think your score was a 271, but that's okay.
Just a little below it. I think it was like a 260 or something.
but I mean, this is what they call, they ask me, and you know what? I love that because then I have an opportunity to kind of chit chat with them a little bit and I get to know them and I ask them questions, and overwhelming majority, they support this. They do. They understand what's going on and they get it. And they're like, we understand the frustration of our community. We understand that they want to protect themselves. We understand the narrative of the media right now, and they're really pushing this agenda, whether it's true or not. This is all they hear. So they want to be able to protect their lives and the lives of their loved ones. And this is how they're doing it.
Daria, and you maybe you don't know the answer to this, but I would suspect you probably have a little bit more inside information on this than I do. The Attorney General this year has introduced a bill, at least in the Senate, to strip the local authorities of their ability to issue a concealed carry permit, and that was supported by the Police Chiefs Association, I believe. Now you're telling us that when you get your feedback from the police chiefs who issue these local licenses, that they're largely supportive of doing these things. They understand that the community is looking for these things. Why would the Police Chiefs Association support a bill that would strip their right to issue these local permits and support the Attorney General's ability to be the sole issuer on his whim, complete discretion on his whim, to issue permits in the state of Rhode Island?
Completely political. Absolutely political. That's all that is all about, and that's all that will ever be about. It has nothing to do with public safety at all. It has everything to do with uh, uh, discretionary, arbitrary issuing of licenses, and it's going to be the good old boy network all over again. The Attorney General's office, once he gets everything under his control, yeah, he'll do a couple of favors for his friends. He'll issue to this one, he'll issue to that one. But then that disenfranchises a whole bunch of people that are the most vulnerable. So
Yeah.
that's exactly why Don DiBiasio in the 70s decided that this was not the way to go. We have to have a split system. We have to have the local chiefs and we have to have the AG's office. And that was to prevent the control from being all under one jurisdiction, because then it becomes an arbitrary and subjective system. And you can't have
and,
that.
and
It's like you look at a photograph of somebody and it's like, oh, he looks like a criminal. Oh, we can't give him a permit. It
I,
shouldn't be that way.
I think I might have told you the story a while back. One of the former attorneys generals that I worked for, used to tell me that the applications for these permits used to go right to his desk, and he told his BCI unit to put the picture of that person right on the top of that application, and that would be the first thing he saw, and he'd make his decision looking at that picture without even going through that application. So I know how it works in that office. I worked there for 12 years, and it's I don't know if it's still that way, but I do know that this current attorney general is basically reducing the number of permits, which was already small to begin with, for coming from that office, to almost nothing at this point, because he does not believe that there is a Second Amendment right to carry outside the home, absent extraordinary circumstances, which I think is a travesty. You're right, it is devastating to certain vulnerable members of our population. It's
It definitely is. And
inexplicable.
I see it every single day. I see it all the time. It's absolutely not right. And that's why we have to keep in place this system of shall issue, and the attorney general should have theirs. I mean, there is a need for the attorney general, because they have the provision for um, security guards that need to carry
Right.
open. So 114718 provides open carry. So I do a fair amount of security guards that work at the casinos, that work at Twin River, they work in Tiverton, and they have to go through the Attorney General's office in order to get the permit that allows them to carry open. They can't get one through their local jurisdiction. So there is a need for that, unless that's changed statutorily.
Yeah, that's no that has not changed, and that's one of the only differences between the two permits, is that the Attorney General's permit allows you to carry openly, as opposed to the town permits, which only permit concealed carry. And that kind of leads us into the segue that I kind of started with here, that the United States Supreme Court is going to now make that determination, hopefully. In that case, the Corlett case, when they hear it next in their next term, and they're going to if I'm not mistaken, I'm just looking at the article here. They're going to decide whether or not the state's denial, and this is New York, the state's denial of the petitioner's application for concealed licenses for self-defense violated the Second Amendment. And that's a pretty broad question. It's not as broad as what they were asking for, but it still has the implication to be pretty broad because New York, I'm not a lawyer in New York. I just read about the laws there. But New York State, forget New York City because you're not getting one unless you're a celebrity. But New York State requires that if you are asking for a concealed carry permit for self-defense purposes, you have to have a special need for self-protection, which is distinguishable from those of the general public. So, in other words, like we were talking about before, that you have to have a stalker, you have to have been the victim of a crime, you have to be maybe somebody who has been targeted by another person, and that's been documented through police reports. That's the only way you're getting a concealed carry permit in the state of New York for self-defense purposes. And that's what the U.S. Supreme Court is going to look at, which has, if they rule in a ruling that would say that that is a undue burden on Second Amendment rights, could have the potential to upend laws across the country, concealed carry permitting schemes across the country, which require that an applicant show need to have a permit to carry a firearm outside their house, and including here in Rhode Island, the Attorney General scheme that requires you to show demonstrate need to have a permit outside your home. Honestly, I'm hoping that the Supreme Court, which has ducked this issue several times, finally weighs in and clarifies just how far the Second Amendment goes. What are your thoughts on the potential of this upcoming Supreme Court case?
Well, I love the fact that you call it a scheme. And you mentioned that a couple of times. Yeah, because that's exactly what it is. I mean, the founding fathers made it extremely clear. We don't need law after law after law. It's like the Second Amendment is there. It's enshrined in our Constitution. It is the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, period. That's the law. Why do we need law after law after law? We do not need this. But this is where people come in and they're like, well, but hey, I have to do this, the other thing. I know that I made it very clear early on that I am very supportive of the Second Amendment. I think you should take it upon yourself personally to do some training. But here's the problem that I see is what happens if it's ruled down? Then what happens? Does that mean that we have no right to carry outside of our home? Is that the problem with this? With what could potentially happen?
There's always the potential. There's always the potential that they make bad law. A case like this has wide-ranging implications, and
right.
Those of us who are supportive of Second Amendment rights, and I'm supportive of any constitutional right. I think it should be protected by the government as opposed to restricted. But this does have, it does have wide-ranging implications if they go the other way, and they could say that
right.
the right does not extend beyond your home, and beyond your home becomes more of a privilege rather than a right. And it's a distinction you made when you were talking about driving your car, getting a driver's license. We certainly don't want it to come to that, because nowhere in the Constitution do I see a right that says you have the right to drive a car or have a driver's license, but there is somewhere in the Constitution that says you have the right to keep and bear arms. So I'm certainly hopeful with the current composition of the court that they will recognize that the Second Amendment is not a second-class right, despite the number that of the amendment in the Constitution. It's not a second-class right, and apply the strict scrutiny standard under constitutional law that says if the government is going to burden a fundamental constitutional right, that they must pass strict scrutiny, which almost all restrictions that are made by the government, which are viewed under strict scrutiny, fail under constitutional law. And I think that Justice Kavanaugh, before he was confirmed to the Supreme Court, had actually made that point, saying that it should be looked at under strict scrutiny as opposed to this intermediate or some squishy standard that these lower courts have applied and when looking at our right to bear arms. But there always is that risk. And I tell people who come into my office all the time who want to, I want to sue the government for, denying my permit. I want to sue whoever it is for, violating my rights. I tell them the one thing you don't want to do is make bad law, because once that law is made at the Supreme Court level, it is almost impossible to get overturned absent an act of, in Rhode Island, the General Assembly, which is not going to be on the side of gun owners and gun rights supporters, or an act of Congress, which right now certainly is not on the side of gun rights and gun supporters. So you do have to be careful about which cases you take up. And, at least 4 justices are needed to take a case to the Supreme Court. And so 4 justices have at least 4 justices have at least signed on to hear this case, and they will hear it. And I don't know how sweeping the ruling will be, but it could be sweeping in one way towards the Second Amendment, pro Second Amendment, but it could be just as sweeping the other way against the Second Amendment. And that's the scary part when these cases get heard, because trying to predict what the Supreme Court will do, as we've seen in many other situations, is like playing Russian roulette. Yeah, it's like playing Russian roulette. I would not want to put money down on what they're going to do.
Well, we saw in the election. I mean, we did. Trump appointed 3 Supreme Court justices. We thought when he brought his case to the Supreme Court for election fraud, blah blah blah, it was going to be a shoo-in. It didn't work that way. And so that's what I'm worried about, is like, okay, they're going to take it up. We're hoping that the ruling is in our favor. If it's not, then what? I mean, I'm always kind of pessimistic on that side. And Roberts, oh boy, that guy, he's no respect for him.
I'm a rule of law kind of guy, and whatever the rule of law is, I am for. And I think, unfortunately, this is just my personal opinion, but I think Chief Justice Roberts has become more concerned with the image of the court rather than the rule of law these days. And that's unfortunate. That's not the role of the judge, to worry about the image of the court. It's the role of the judge, as he said during his confirmation hearing, to call balls and strikes, just like an umpire in a baseball game. Not be worried about the politics, not be worried about what somebody's going to criticize the court over or not criticize the court over. It's their job to interpret the law in a fair, impartial, in an apolitical manner. And I really am hopeful that will be done in this particular case, because if it's not, and it goes the other way, we are reliant upon Congress to overrule the Supreme Court and pass a law to change that. And I just don't see that happening, because it takes a filibuster-proof majority to get anything passed these days. And that means 60 votes in the Senate to get that done. And no party since I think Barack Obama's first term in office had 60 senators of the same party in the Senate. And so I am hopeful that the justices look at the text of the Constitution, look at the ruling in Heller, Heller versus the District of Columbia, McDonald versus the City of Chicago, which were the first Second Amendment cases in decades, which established the constitutional right to own a firearm in your own home for your own self-protection. Hope they look at what the history that Justice Scalia went through painstakingly about where the Second Amendment came from, and the role of the first clause of the Second Amendment, the militia, and how that plays a role in this. I hope they take that into consideration and come to the conclusion that the Second Amendment is just as fundamental a right as the First, the Fourth, the Fifth, the Sixth, all those rights that we all fight so hard to protect. And, it bothers me when you see one constitutional right that's been relegated below those of others. And I'm sure it bothers you just as much, Daria.
Well, we're seeing it with the First Amendment right now. aren't we?
We certainly
We're
are.
seeing it with the first. We're seeing it with the First Amendment. So why wouldn't the Second Amendment be next, and the Fourth, and the Fifth, and the 14th, and the what? Right now, it's like we're in a free fall. This is what absolutely concerns me. And without the Second Amendment, forget it. All bets are off. We're gone. We're lost. So, what concerns me about this going? I'm happy that it's being taken up by the Supreme Court, but I'm worried that it could go the other way as well. And then what? It's like, okay, you can keep a gun in your house, but you have no right to carry it out on your person in society. So then what? The criminals will, and the law abiders
Right.
won't. So I
Right.
just, you know,
I've
I'm
yet to
worried
see a
about that.
criminal
I
abide
really
by a
am.
law.
No, that's not happening. And unfortunately, I have to tell you honestly, I don't have with the current state of affairs right now. I do not have any faith, no faith in what is going on in our government, in our criminal justice system, in the judges. Watch you go on Google and watch two videos. One is called Seattle is Dying, and the other one is a follow-up to that, which is called Saving the Soul of Seattle. These things are, it's Seattle, but it's ubiquitous. It is happening all over this country right now. It's lawlessness, and the good people, the people that want to preserve law and order, we're being totally rejected, and the criminals are allowed to run free. So we have to have some semblance of protection. It's a God-given right. And as soon as they decide that, okay, that's it, no, you're going to get a whole lot of people that are going to follow that. You're going to get a whole lot of people that aren't, but we have, the criminals aren't going to obey any type of law whatsoever. So unfortunately, I just don't have a whole lot of faith in our criminal justice system. So forgive me. I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but I'm going to cross my fingers and I'm going to hope for the best.
And I understand that it's hard to have faith in a system where you have politicians running the system, and I don't have a whole lot of use for politicians, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm running to be Rhode Island's next Attorney General, because we have a politician in there right now. We've had politicians in there for as long as I've been alive, and probably longer, a lot longer than that. And I think we need to take the politics out of who decides what rights we can exercise, which rights are more important than others. And we need to have, especially in the position of an attorney general, somebody who is there for the rule of law and protecting the citizens and their rights. And I think the politicians are just out for themselves, out to keep their power, out to keep their thumb on the scale to make sure their interests are protected and the people who are surrounding them keep their power in check. And that's something that I just think that we as Rhode Islanders, we as Americans need to reject in total. I can tell you one thing. If I am lucky enough to be elected the attorney general, whatever my politics are going to be checked at the door when I take that oath of office. And I'm going to be a rule of law guy because I believe that everybody should be treated fairly, apolitically, without regard to anyone's personal political background, their connections to politicians, their connections to people with anything. And I think that that's sorely needed in a state like Rhode Island. And it's sorely needed throughout our country, to be quite honest with you.
There's no question about that. There's absolutely no question. But they have ways of getting to people that buck their system. And that's my concern. That's it. I'm just being the
Of
devil's
course.
advocate here,
I
where
oh
you don't agree with what they do. They dox you, they censor you, they send you a letter saying that you should resign. We see this all the time so that they can get their way. And so my faith is a little shaken right now. So I'm hoping and praying that this decision by the Supreme Court will be favorable and defend what we the people want, which is our Second Amendment, which is enshrined in our Constitution, which is to keep and bear arms. I mean, it's the highest level of the law. Why do we need
It
another law
is.
to tell us what to do? That is the
What?
law. What's the argument? It's like, don't you
Why
get
do
it?
we?
Shall not be
Yeah.
infringed. I don't
Why do
get
we
it.
need
You know?
permission? Why do we need permission to exercise our rights
Right.
as given to
Why
us
is
by
this
the
even
Constitution?
why is this even going to the Supreme Court? Why? Can you
Because
answer that?
we've allowed years and years of this
Yep.
dwindling of this particular right, and the
That's right.
states local authorities have little by little chipped away at the language of that constitutional amendment, the state constitutional amendment, and it's just come to the point where now finally it's come to a head. Are we going to be able to exercise our rights as the Constitution says we should be able to? I really hope. I'm gonna cross my fingers as well, Daria, that that the Supreme Court puts aside their political hats and just looks at this from a strictly a law standpoint and comes to the right decision like they would. Like they should in any case involving a fundamental right, and I believe this is a fundamental right. Daria, we've this has been such a fun show. This has been such a fun show when I know we've done this on your show before, and it's so easy talking to you. We lose track of time so much. But I want to give you the opportunity. I want to give you the opportunity, like the Coalition Radio has given to me many times, for a shameless plug for where everyone can find you if they're looking for your services and how they can get in touch with you. So please take the time you need to tell us where they can find you if they want to be a safe, law-abiding gun owner and citizen.
Thank you, Charles. I appreciate it. And I really appreciate you inviting me, extending an invitation onto your show tonight. It's been a long time. I've been off the air now for my Lock, Stock and Daria radio show. I did it for 10 years. I've been off for about 2 years. But the timing was, I guess, right. I've been extremely busy with my training. If you would like to, oh, there's a kitty cat. Here's Trigger. Want to see Trigger cat? That's, of course, his name is Trigger, right?
Of
He
course,
wouldn't
of
have another.
course.
He wouldn't have another name. But if you want to get in touch with me, lockstockanddaria.com. That's my website. I do, you name it, we do it. From non-shooting courses to shooting courses to 7-state concealed carry permit classes. Concealed carry, Rhode Island, whatever, sporting clays, muzzle loading, shotgun, rifle, pistol. We do it all. We can customize anything for you. And go to my website, www.lockstockanddaria.com. I specialize in concealed carry permitting, helping people get their concealed carry permits. I know the ins and outs of what every single town is doing because I do it every single day. I know the best towns, I know the worst towns, and we're how to get you trained properly to do what you need to do to get your permit. And I'm all for you.
Let,
I'm on your
yeah,
side. I'm rooting for you.
and let me just say, I am the first person to endorse Daria as everything she just said she is. I can't think of anybody that I would trust more with training and knowledge, just overall knowledge of not only the process and how to become a certified, a legal a law-abiding gun holder and citizen, but someone who's going to do it in a safe, responsible manner. I can't think of anybody better than you, Daria. I am so happy you came on tonight. It's been too long since we've been able to do this. I feel like we can go on for hours, and I hope you'll come
We
back
can.
on one of my
I
next
will.
episodes. And I know we have so much more we can get to, and we will get to that because this is an important situation. It's an important
It
subject for a
is.
lot of people here in Rhode Island. And I just want to thank you again for taking the time out. And I know you have a very busy schedule, taking the time for coming here and talking to us here on Chaz Calenda, attorney at law. And again, if you want to reach me on for my law business, I'm at Inman and Torgy, attorneys at law. I'm at 1500 Nooseneck Hill Road 823-9200. I do all sorts of areas of law, including assisting people helping them get their concealed carry permits when they've run into a problem with one of the licensing authorities. So everything we talked about here tonight, you've got two people who know the ins and outs of how this system works. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us here tonight on Chaz Calenda, Attorney at Law, Episode 4, with our guest, Daria Bruno. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode, and I look forward to working for you, the citizens of Rhode Island, helping to understand the legal system and all the situations that go along with it. Thank you again, and I hope you all have a great evening. Daria, thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you.